like you to join me, welcome. A political analyst, a legal practitioner, both international and local affairs. The man is well grounded. Robinson Imade, welcome to the show, sir. Congratulations on you being a grandpa.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Thank you.
All right. So close to him is Barrister Osanho Osazua. You know him too well. He's a legal practitioner, international forum, international politics is well there. But I just keep on wondering, why is he so skeptical when it comes to local politics? Osanho, you give us an answer today on this show. Local politics, we'll say no, no international, yes. But for local, I don't want to have a hand in it. I wonder why that is. And of course, really close to Osazua, it's a political analyst and environmentalist. And when you talk about human activism, he is well grounded. Local and international politics, he is up to speed in what is really happening globally. You already say him on air. He is no other person than Cyril Okumbowa. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Wesley, for having me. All
right. Now, Venezuela, they are there again on the news. Maduro came out blazing, landslide victory, but we have complaints. What's your take on the just concluded election in Venezuela? Let me start off with you, Barrister Robinson. What do you feel about Venezuela's election?
Well, Venezuela, like you said, is on the news again. And talking about the just concluded election, I agree with those who describe it as a show election. Landslide victory, they call it, but what happened before, during, and just now immediately after the election? You discover that the election was programmed in such a way as to give landslide victory to Maduro. It is true that he won the election, but what about the voter apathy? You are aware that less than 30%, they are flouting 41% of the registered voters came out to vote. It means there was sharp voter apathy, the worst that we've had in the history of Venezuela since 1999. So in my opinion, the victory is one that one cannot boastfully be proud of. Certainly, the people of Venezuela are more concerned with living, existing, living as human beings. You know the exodus from the place. I am surprised that in spite of the hue and cry over he not contesting, he went ahead, had a kangaroo election, and is today boasting about a very successful election. I don't agree with him.
You don't agree with Nicolas Maduro, and according to Barrister Robinson, it's a kangaroo election. Osanho, what's your take?
Thank you very much, Wilson. Thank you for having me. Venezuela today reminds me of everything that is wrong with the human species, with everything that is wrong with us, mankind. Venezuela is a blessed country, which ordinarily should have it the way she wants it. Speaking that way, it means Venezuela should be among the elite countries of the world, where prosperity abounds, where peace and quiet and good life, given our immense resources. You see, but Venezuela today is a sorry sight because of the problems that we human beings have created on every side. I find it very painful for me as a person that a country such as Venezuela, a country that has tried, positively tried to bring food, to bring succor, to bring plenty, abundance to our citizens, to have failed spectacularly the way she has failed. It reminds me that no matter how good, how lofty an idea is, if the human input, if it is not well regulated, if it's not well done, if you keep pushing your frontier thinking you want to get a result and the result is not working and you stick to that particular ideology, irrespective of prevailing circumstances, it is bad. And today, Venezuela epitomizes that. You see, it was the great English writer, William Shakespeare, who said, and I quote, "The sweetest things turn sourest by their deeds. and lilies that fester smell far worse than weeds, unquote. What the Bard of Avon was saying in essence was that ordinarily there are certain things that are good. It's the sweetest thing, the stone sourest by their deeds. That ordinary lilies that are supposed to be good, supposed to be nice, when they fester, when they begin to fester, they smell far worse than weeds.
Right.
That's what today obtains in Venezuela. That socialism should come to such a sorry pass is something that breaks my heart.
All right.
That Maduro could not build or even maintain the lofty ideas and the practical works of the great Comandante Hugo Chavez. He has failed. He has failed the working people all over the world.
He has failed the working people.
He has failed every left-leaning persons all over the world.
All right.
And the time has come for him to leave.
And the time has come for him to leave because according to you, he has failed. Cyril, do you have anything contrary to say? Because it's like both of them are towing the same line.
Well, as a corollary, if Hugo Chavez were alive, I'm sure the situation in Venezuela would have been very much the same, except for human relations and the acceptance that he had from his people. That is the part that Maduro is lacking seriously. When Comandante Hugo Chavez was alive, you know, he was always in direct opposition to the U.S. They were hardly ever friends. In his media palace, he would sing poems and chant at Hillary Clinton. You understand? He mentions names. People loved him for their late night evening shows. He was one who could relate to the people. He also made the people to realize that they are at a war with the United States, who did not approve of their way of life. So this way, Hugo Chavez was able to gather his people as a very strong base. He also had friends in the region who had similar ideology, like Cuba, all right? So they did what they could to navigate the economics of the time. Mind you, US sanctions on the nation of Venezuela has always been biting, and this has been on since the time of Hugo Chavez, all right? This eventually saw to the devaluation of their currency to ensure economic stability. But, you know, when your economy is receding, and you're basically a socialist government, in which case the bulk of the resources go to meet the needs of the people, and your export potential is waning by the day, your GDP is waning, and it's only a matter of time, all right, before this happens. Right now, it's so bad that Maduro, taking a swift leave from, okay, let's say a detour from the path of Hugo Chavez, is now wanting to meet with President Donald Trump. He's begging for a meeting. He said, and I quote, "Name the time and place, I'll be there. You choose it, I will come." Because daily basics are no longer available. From toiletries to bread, everything that you need to survive socially are not being rationed. This has seen to mass migration from the country of Venezuela. There are others who call it home, who perhaps don't even have the resources to go out. They want to survive.
All right.
That is where the opposition has tried to build on to disenchant the people, because most of them are so now taking the hit that they are not buying, you know, the philosophies again. They want to get by as decent human beings. They are hardworking people. They want to get by. So the opposition is calling for a change in ideology. Now, mind you, this pressure has been on as early as 2013, when Nicolas Maduro succeeded Hugo Chavez. All right. The nation had hoped that Maduro would be able to unify the people. But of course, he had to continue that popular ideology, all right, to keep him in power. But even now, it's been one problem to the other, to the extent that the opposition had to initiate an idea of a recall. I think that's where they shot themselves in the foot, because the organs of government that's responsible for electioneering process, as we have it in Nigeria, is under the control of the Venezuelan government. All right, so the National Electoral Committee there decided, okay, fine, since this is what you want, we'll give it to you. But if you look at the program of recall, you saw that they made it tedious and made it difficult for people to abide in, because you had to stretch all through 2016 into 2017.
All right.
So, but even when they insisted, by the time they were about to begin preliminary collection of signatures, They cut it off. What did they cite? Irregularities, voters, whatever and whatever.
Okay.
But look at it. During the process, there was no way the opposition could not call for an election. So Hugo Chavez bought the time he needed to go through the very tumultuous times he endured as president, with the protests sometimes degenerating to loss of lives and injuries to several.
And to him becoming the president right now.
To the point where he is.
Okay, fine. I'll come to you. I'll come back to you, Cyril. Now, I'll appreciate it if the presidential director could just please roll the video so that people can get to know who and what we are really talking about. It's about the just concluded election of Venezuela that saw Hugo Chavez emerging as the winner. As in, according to what they said, it's a landslide victory. So, PD, I appreciate it if you just roll the clip over. Thank you. Now, from what Osaho said, he said it's like Maduro don't know when to change ideology. And from what Siri said, he said now it's like Nicolas Maduro is begging a capitalist society which is totally against the norms of Venezuela. Is that where he really missed it? Was he so high-handed in handling the people, hence he's losing touch with the people, or because of the pressure mounted on him by perceived enemies vis-a-vis the West?
There's no doubting the fact that the West mounted serious pressure on him. But again, his immediate predecessor in office was able to galvanize the whole of this, carrying the people along, and at the end of the day, he survived it. The man in question, Nicolas, is, in my opinion, one who has lost touch with reality. He believes that he has the people. Perhaps what he has going for him is the military. That even when the opposition are now calling for the military to intervene, he has them in his pocket, because they are in charge of virtually everything in the country. That is what he believes will safeguard his position. He's a selfish person. From the time he came on board, after the death of Chavez, he lost touch with the people. Protest galore from one point to the other. I don't believe that it would have been easy for him to change ideology. It's not a simple thing. It has to go through a number of processes. But the fact that he did not know when to surrender is what baffles me. At the end of the first term in office, both outsiders and insiders didn't want him to continue. That's when he would have bowed out. They say a good boxer knows when to surrender. He didn't know when to surrender. He believed that the people will get to love him, will get to like him. He muzzled the oppositions, put them in jail, chased some out of the country. Under his watch, he saw majority of the workforce leaving and going to seek asylum in other countries. He was not deterred. I would have thought that if he had what it takes to be a leader, he would have known when to surrender. Unfortunately, like we have in African countries, no leader wants to leave. No leader wants to quit, in spite of the fact that you have lost touch with reality, you have lost the confidence of the people, you have lost the trust of even your immediate lieutenants. Don't forget that one of the major opposition leaders was part of his own party at the beginning. So those were indices that would have told him that the game was up. He did it. There's no doubting the fact that the West mounted pressure on him. The pressure is on. That he's begging to meet with Trump is neither here nor there. What the people want is for him to step aside. If he does not do that, there will be no peace there. And there is no way, in spite of the fact that Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world, what has that come to? 14,000% inflation rate. How does he get out of that? He needs the cooperation of both the people within and the world outside to survive.
You need the cooperation of both people within and the world outside to survive. Now, from what he said, which is virtually true, as it's totally true, from the inception of his inauguration, there's been this clarion call for him to step aside. Opposition's coming up. Now, from what he did, from what he said, I'll start about gagging of opposition. Does he have any other choice than to do that? Because from what he admitted to, these guys are not allowing him to function.
Thank you again, Wincy. You see, excuses are not too far away when you are looking for them. They are readily available, and they are good. When I say they are good, they are always good excuses for failing. Always good excuses that taking a good look at them, you say, yes, okay, I understand. This is why you failed. Okay, it makes sense that for these reasons you failed. But the good leader must transcend that. And the great leader must be able not just to transcend it, but to be able to bring out something beautiful out of it. That's what Dr. King talked about when he said, hewing out a stone of hope from a mountain of despair. It's the same thing. You see, Maduro has neither the luck nor the charisma of Hugo Chavez. Hugo Chavez was splendid in the true manhood of him. It is said that holy and splendid causes are served by men who are themselves holy and splendid. And I tell you that Hugo Comandante Chavez was splendid in the true manhood of him, splendid in the heroic grace of him. And all that splendor was able to transmute all that splendor into a practical demonstration that affected the life of the ordinary Venezuelans. Our friend Maduro has not been that lucky. Immediately he came, there was a glut in oil, and OPEC said all members should cut down their production to encourage, not to bring, so that the oil in the circulation will be reduced. But of course, immediately OPEC member cut, United States ramped up production, which adversely affected all OPEC countries, especially Venezuela, that has a strong socialist system. That the money, like my friend said, as the money comes, you just apply it back to the people without any meaningful capital expenditure. So that was that, and it affected them. And of course, Maduro has strong enemies within, and even stronger enemies with that. When you are faced with such opposition outside, especially from a close neighbor, a 16 trillion economic neighbor, talking about the US now, who is out to get you, it will get you. The United States is too big, is too great, is too domineering to be ignored, especially by a closed neighbor. So the US has been able, with the active connivance of some Venezuelans, to emasculate and to tighten the hose around the neck of Maduro in such a way that he should have realized that there is no way he can make any meaningful progress without the cooperation of the US or without necessarily. Cuba could antagonize the US because Cuba was a small enclave, a small place with a very strong leader.
Okay.
But Venezuela is the third largest country in South America, with the exception of Brazil and Argentina. It could not afford to confront an headlong confrontation with the US without bruising itself, wounding itself fatally. And that is what has happened.
Okay.
The time has come, and I think now is the time for Maduro to hew out a stone of hope from this mountain of despair. And he has realized it, but about a bit late. The time has come for it to find a truth, to make a room for the capitalist venture which appears to be the US, and make allowance for them. You give what belongs to Caesar, you give it to Caesar. You can't have such wonderful deposit under your soil, and your neighbor that needs you are trying to make problem with him. There's no way you can work.
You use the phrase capitalist vulture. I'll come back to you on that. You talked about the reasons setting themselves on the foot. Many of them choose not to take part in the election. Do you think that is part of their own undoing for Nicolas Maduro to come out tops in the just concluded election?
Well, I would say it's a bit of both. First of all, by the time the major opposition parties, some of them decided to boycott their municipal elections, it was grounds for Nicolas Maduro to ostracize them from the national elections. And most of them, they knew all they could do was complain. They couldn't fight it because they set their foot, on the wrong path, and it didn't work out too well for patriotism. But of the candidates that went on, the major opposition leader Henry Falcon Javier Bertucci. You know, looking at the results, you know, it's an election with which the outcome was already predetermined before they hit the polls. That is where the National Electoral Committee has failed the people of Venezuela. Of course, they are under the wings of the government, and they've so far gone to a large extent to damage the values that some of the values that exactly qualifies them to have the preeminence as the electoral umpire. It's clear they're on the side of Nicolas Maduro, so there's no independence on this one. That being said, Nicolas Maduro couldn't have continued for long. Like I told you, most of these economic issues were already biting from the time of Hugo Chavez. It was just a matter of time. I think that the mistake Nicolas Maduro made was because he was trying to place the base. If you look at the transition to power, it was a father-to-son anointing. The people loved Hugo Chavez, and they knew a bit late that Hugo Chavez was dying. And they had so much hope in this man. So the man transmitted the blessings. As a matter of fact, by the time he went to Cuba for his last cancer treatment, Nicolas Maduro was already acting. And so he found it a huge responsibility to continue to keep that base. But of course, he didn't have the charisma Hugo Chavez has. And deferring to my friend here, he said he didn't have this luck either. But for Hugo Chavez, it's been a mix of both, because he has to develop himself all the way through the military coup, and even imprisonment before he eventually emerged as the leader, all right? Nicolas Maduro doesn't have much of a history. You understand? He has just been loyal to Hugo Chavez, and he now has this enormous burden of carrying through what Hugo Chavez embodies in terms of ideals, policies, as well as ideology. But I think that time would have been the time for him to chart a new course. But he couldn't risk it. The course would be to begin steps to integrate into the Committee of Nations. Isolationism would not help them. Of course, they've had their big brother in the person of who was the man, Fidel Castro. Fidel Castro was getting old. His power was waning. He anointed his brother, Raul Castro. And today, where is the Castro dynasty out of power? Because Raul has eventually handed down. Now look at the Cuban economy. They sought peace with the US. It took the intervention of the Vatican under Obama's regime to ensure that, and Obama began to roll back some of those hostile policies towards Cuba.
Okay.
Although they also decided to scale back on their own powers and on their own ideology. So there was already establishment of bilateral trade before Trump came in.
All right.
And Trump rolled back those quickly. So back to the point, I think that it's time that the people of Venezuela embraces an alternative way of living. They can't have so much.
Okay.
And be
Suffering.
a social or a capitalist, a social, a welfare state.
Okay.
The idea is to defer to those who are in, because they hold a lot of reserve that the US could do.
Okay, fine.
The options the US have is up north in Canada and in Venezuela. Otherwise, you see how much of the US money has gone to the Middle East. And most of those have not been on record that have been used to fund terrorist organizations.
This is okay, fine. I'll come back to you, Cyril. Now, let's take a look at the sanctions. When this happened, talking about the victory of Nicolas Maduro, landslide victory, his party, his family, his friends, well-wishers were happy with him, while oppositions were complaining bitterly, as well, they even went about protesting. America said, look, we want you to revert this and conduct another election. If not, bam! Is that the right way for America to really respond? Imposing more sanctions, or threatening to impose more sanctions on Venezuela? They don't think they're like hitting up the polity negatively, and that may bounce back on them.
It is said that those who make peaceful negotiations impossible make violent change inevitable. U.S. right from time had warned, do things the right way, don't destroy democracy, let the people speak. And of course you know that Maduro has refused. He boasted before the election that the only set of people who matters were the Venezuelans. The chips are down now. is seeking help from outside, from America. I don't know. Let us not forget that under the laws, Venezuela is a sovereign state. And imposing sanctions is a right of America. We may look at the moral aspect of it. Oh, is that the best? Would they now come to remove an elected president? A president who says he has won landslide victory? Would they now use the military that is pro the government? I think the sanction is the only option if the people, the welfare of the people of Venezuela must be protected. Don't forget that even America is sympathetic to those migrating to the country from Venezuela. For the dictator who has said he emerged under a free and fair election to bow, the sanctions must come. The effect of the sanction notwithstanding, I think that America didn't have any other option. Unless we are saying that they would have forced cushioning the effects of the hardship brought about by, according to my brother, a human factor, as led by Nicolas Maduro, by now forcing aid on them or bringing succor to them. No, it's a sovereign state. It's an independent state, and so the people has little or no right to directly affect the governance unless they're invited. So what we have as the only option, in my opinion, to force this man to succumb to the will of the people of Venezuela is the sanction. That's the way I look at it.
The sanction, and all will be punished. Because right now, both the for and of course the against opposition, like party members, are all being punished right now. So you're saying that's the best thing for him to, for American to do?
I hardly can see any other option if that man is to be forced out of office.
Okay.
And if America snubs his invitation to meet with them, you'll see that in no time he will bow out. There is no way he can continue under the prevailing circumstances.
Okay. 6 years has come and gone. 6 years more to run. Venezuela is like groaning under hardship, recession, inflation, poverty, lack and want, and now the election that saw the president coming out tops. Landslide victory. Use the term capitalist vultures. Now, do you see Nicolas Maduro doing what Donald Trump wants him to do? Cancel the election, conduct another one. Do you see him bending to that? Even if from what Sirius said, which is totally true, he said, we'll fix the time and place, I will come.
Thank you again, Wincy. I will attempt to answer you, to talk about it. But let's talk about the sanctions first. I am one of those persons who strongly believe that sanctions, when it comes to a nation, a sovereign nation, has not worked. If you look throughout history, you will see that sanctions have a way of hardening the regimes and punishing the people without necessarily hurting the government in power and making the government get more excuses that, look, we are where we are today because of what they have done and continue to do to us. That, but for the sanctions, I wouldn't have been able to get results. It deflects from their own failure. It gives them a good excuse to say, this is why I have failed. And the people have a way of rallying behind such regimes because it gives them a mentality of the rest of the world against us. It has never really worked. It was sanctions that gave North Korea nuclear capabilities. If those sanctions have not been there, the North Korean would have not said, even though we don't have food, we just need a bomb. They didn't hit for months and years, but they got the bomb. That's how it worked, and that is how it will continue to work. But I strongly think, when I listen to that evangelical pastor, one of those persons, Patusi, his name, that ran against Maduro, he said something that was very instructive, that really struck my heart. When he said that those Venezuelans that are calling for more sanctions, that they don't know what they are, that it is satanic, because he runs an outreach that feed the hungry, the malnourished children, those who have not been able to feed themselves, those who don't have toiletries, those no without shelter. He runs a big evangelical church, and they look after these people. And he thought the time has come that he cannot do much in his private capacity, but to seek public office so that he can be able to make a difference. That those Venezuelans who now say the way forward is for more sanctions, it will not hurt Maduro. Sanction will not reduce the reaction, the food that Maduro will eat. Never. It's the average, the Venezuelan on the streets, is that child going to the hospital that will not be able to get an already scarce drugs that are already scarce. Is that woman, that wife that goes to the market to buy something and the money gets even tripled, irrespective of the 13,000% already inflation. So it is the ordinary Venezuelan, the ordinary people of the various regimes that get hurt, not the leadership, not the regime in power. It has a way of hardening and tightening them and enabling them to have a fiercer and a more stiffer grip on power. So that was that. I strongly think that the issue of sanction, this is not the time for it. Let's look for a constructive way forward. Let's look for results. Because if you ask me, honestly, if you ask me, if the elections, I don't know if they were free or fair, but if they go to in a very free and fair election, Maduro will get a sizable chunk of the vote. That's the truth. Given today Venezuela, if it was as free, as fair as the West wants it. Because the election will never be free or fair until their capitalist ally wins. That's the truth.
All right.
So we must go beyond that.
Okay.
They must come to the round table to etch out a future that is without Maduro. That's for me.
That is without Maduro. Okay, fine. Now, you just know, because I'm coming to the next question, because, well, like I said, that if he's going to bow to Donald Trump's requests. Now, both of them, they have opposing view of the sanction. From what Barrister Robinson talked about, he said, look, that is the only way. Why Osanjo said it is satanic, because he quoted one of the evangelical there that came out to contest. What's your angle on the sanction?
Petrucci.
Yeah.
Well, listen, the tables are turning. You're asking me from being a panelist to now play arbiter between both of them.
Yeah, because like, a tie right now.
I will just speak thoughts. When you see governments, right, that are tightening their grips on power by every means possible, the only language you understand is the language of force. Sanctions bring about economic pressure. Without money, you can't run your states. It has the loyalty of the army. Yes. When the reserve runs out and you're no longer able to pay military salary, you see what will happen. If you want Chavez out, the sanctions should bite harder. So I agree with him 100%.
It should bite harder.
Yes.
13,000 inflation rate, the highest so far, the worst so far globally.
They are a sovereign nation. U.S. cannot be seen to carry out military intervention. Otherwise, you'll be violating some international treaties. Of course. Now, me get my goods. I don't want to trade with you. And of course, when I do this, because I'm powerful, my allies would also, of course, we've now seen, everybody now knows that it may sound disrespectful, but Europe is just a bulldog without teeth, without the US. And that's what leaves Iran so disappointed, because they can't tend to stand on their own. Nobody wants to risk US sanctions, even as established economies like Germany and France. You go and trade with them and see what will happen. Nobody wants a trade war. The US has come on top of the world as a country with the highest military might. And of course, they have plenty money. They are the most prosperous nation on earth, for crying out loud. So I think therefore, why, despite these values, these socialist values, why is he begging for a meeting? He has not realized that isolationism won't help him. He needs to find a better way to integrate into the Community of Nations. So far, even the results that we're talking about, the US, the UN, the EU, the other states of America, and the United States have rejected the results. Look at those who have accepted the results.
Cuba,
China.
Russia. We'll come into that.
Cuba, I'm coming. Cuba, I'm coming. Cuba, Turkey, even Syria. These are countries where the strongman syndrome holds sway. Look at Turkey, for example. Erdogan wants to have absolute powers, and he's doing it by all means. The coup gave him the excuse to run through major institutions without looking back on the grounds of national interest or national security if you have it. Look at China. I don't know what Xi Jinping is doing with power. He has abolished tenures. So you look at the crop of people. He's further isolated himself. Even as, when China started out, everybody knew China to be a communist nation, right? But you see, China adopted a different strategy. From core communism to pseudo-communism, to socialism, and now they are also now leading capitalists.
All right.
They realized at the point that 2011, they needed to join the World Trade Organization. Even though they have their ways, which we've talked about on this program and beyond. So Cuba cannot, even your big brother, Venezuela, even the big brother Cuba, is capitulating already. All right, these things are not sustainable. So why don't you integrate?
Integration.
You become stronger for it. Instead of US to spend that much on Middle East oil, they will get it at a cheaper rate and Cuba economy will boom.
Okay.
But you look at this. You look at it. What's for this is now that oil prices were dropping at the time it came in. Oh yes, OPEC communities decided to cut down production so as to reduce the oil in circulation. That was when, my friend, the sanction on Iran was lifted. These people haven't sold oil in so long, and they were going to have none of it. So the global market was flooded with Iranian oil. They need the money. You understand what I'm saying? So there's no way. So the price of these fossil fuels keeps going down. Now the world is adopting a shift in energy policy. The US, most of their auto plants are going either complete electrical or they're doing hybrid. In the UK government has announced that by 2040, they will no longer accept the use of petrol or gasoline or diesel vehicles in their country. Volvo, as an auto manufacturer, has said by 2025, they will cease to produce both diesel and petrol vehicles.
Okay.
So the world is going the other way.
So Venezuela
and this
change also
for these resources that is under the ground.
All right, thank you.
Can't work for long.
Thank you. If you just joined us, this is International Forum, taking a look at the just concluded Venezuelan election that saw Nicolas Maduro coming out tops with so much controversies. But apart from US and some other countries condemning the election, like what Siri talked about, Russia, China, Cuba, Syria, they're among the countries that really congratulated Nicolas Maduro in his victory. See Nicolas Maduro stepping down, or do you see him becoming more hardened to say come what may, just like the rocket man who will pull through this? I want to start off from you, Barrister Robinson.
I do not believe that he has a nerves just now to remain hardened. If he would have been hardened, he would not be seeking a meeting with the US anywhere, anytime. Sanction will break him, and sanction will liberate the people of Venezuela. That's my take.
Right, sanction will break him, and it's going to liberate people of Venezuela. Osazuwa Sanho, your last line on this.
Yeah, the time has come for a new way of doing things in Venezuela. Yes, socialism under Chavez was a huge success. And the success was not only due to his personal charisma, but also many other factors that were favorable. And I think that if Chavez had still lived to today, he would have been rattled, for all his glories and all his strength, he would have been rattled by the prevailing situations that is presently rattling Maduro. But I think that the time has come for Maduro to bow out honorably, to allow peace and prosperity come to the Venezuelan people. Yeah. When we talk about Venezuela, we are talking about one of the richest, naturally and most naturally endowed nations on earth. They have no business being hungry. They have no business being in want, being in lack. It's supposed to be an ebullient and prosperous place. So Maduro should realize that his presence, whether for good or if he has, whether well-intentioned or otherwise, his presence makes things to be difficult.
All right.
And he should find a way out of office. He should just find a way out of office.
Even when he serves me correctly, 6 years ago, you were not having his opinion. I remember we had a discussion when late Chavez blessed Maduro. Go ahead, you were like so happy about it. Right now you're turning. You're turning.
Yes.
That was 6 years ago. I remember.
I'm a Chavez.
All right, thank you.
I so much believe in what Chavez did.
Thank you.
Maduro has failed.
Separated you.
Yes,
Thank
that's
you.
it.
Cyril, your last line.
The only way that the people of Venezuela will get what they want, which is stability and the decency of humanhood.
Stability and decency.
These people, they've lost their dignity. They beg, they just do a lot of things. So you have the country going up in smoke. Internal violence, devaluation of currency, depression, and now having to ration the commonwealth of the nation. It's the worst state you can even think of a man, especially for a country with such vast natural resources. I think the time has come to make a detour from the old ways of doing things. They need to begin to find ways to integrate into the Committee of Nations.
All right.
And I'm sure when they find the acceptance, they will get a lot of aids
All right.
and relief materials that will help
Thank you.
restore the dignity of
Thank you, thank you so much, gentlemen. I appreciate your wonderful analysis. Let's see if Maduro will step down. Let's see if Maduro will break. Let's see if capitalism will eventually take over socialism in Venezuela. Till next week, Tuesday. Bye for now.